Welcome to another podcast by Locker Room Power, a book by yours truly, David Samuel. And today we're at Oliver Tambo Airport in Johannesburg, South Africa, where I'm talking to a keen sportsman, Efe Ekhaese, who is also a consultant for Skill Capital, a recruitment company based in Europe and North America. Welcome, Efe, to the show.
Thanks very much.
And just tell me a little bit more about your job and how you take some of the stuff from what you know of sport and incorporate it into your job. And also, having read the book Locker Room Power, how that relates in some way to your work. I know you're an extremely happy guy.
Very happy at the moment. Yeah.
Given that Watford your beloved Watford have gone up to the Premier League,
Yeah.
and you're looking forward to watching all the big teams next year.
Very much so. Very much so. So at Skill Capital, we do a couple of things really. Half of our business is executive search, so placing CEOs of large businesses, and the other is helping private equity funds get deals done by connecting them to senior executives as well. So essentially, my job is all about connecting people to private equity investors or different types of funds alongside the more traditional recruitment side. And so there are a number of things which you could look at or translate across from sport. Obviously there's the quite mainstream things like being competitive in your pitching processes in terms of trying to win new searches from that side. But one of the interesting things I read and thought about was the use of the weapons and your individual weapons as a recruitment or headhunter, in the sense that I feel different people have different skill sets and strengths, and I think one of the things I'm still learning is being able to use those weapons and realise what your strengths are and how important that is. So anecdotally, you have people at our company who are very analytical and they use that when they're speaking to senior executives. Other people are very friendly and people persons and they use their social skills. I'm always criticism I've always had is that I'm quite laid back, but actually that helps people open up and feel at ease as well. And I think people trying to identify those weapons, often you find the people who get promoted quickly and progress are those who really know what their strengths are, which is something I found.
Yeah, brilliant. Which is obviously part of the book where it's really incredibly important for any highly successful athlete and person in life to know exactly what they're good at, and also to know what they're not good at.
Yeah.
And I think it's always good to not focus on your weaknesses, but rather focus on your strengths.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you have a weakness that prevents you from using your strength,
Yeah.
then I would say in your line of work, if you had a serious social skill problem or something like that, you'd have to work on that. Sure. Even if you're a brilliant analyst.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's balancing both sides, but just having that awareness I think can help you really progress in terms of what you're trying to do as well.
Now, a lot of success in sport is based on belief and confidence. Now, you come across some very, very talented people and very successful people in their fields. I'm quite interested to know that how quickly you can spot people that are what I call the real deal, rather than there are people that do quite well on bluff.
Yeah.
And but certainly in sport, I think as you get very, very experienced, you can spot genuine competence and confidence and belief in what people do because they know it works.
Yeah. No, I think that's something which is very hard to spot sometimes in our job at initial stage, and I think that's why you'll find the people who are the best headhunters are those who have the experience and have had experience in terms of weeding out where real confidence and ability is in terms of people who are just putting it on and using it as a front. And I think if you looked at the difference between a good headhunting firm and a bad headhunting firm, as well as a good headhunter as an individual, is people who can really kind of weed through that faux confidence, which a lot of these people do have, as they are very successful in one way or another, and really kind of getting deep into their abilities, what they're good at, and how much of it is bluff compared to what they can do. And I think that's where you'll find the best placements come from, is where people can really ask the right questions to get to that level of detail. But it's no easy task at all, I think.
So just like a coach, your ability to question is obviously a powerful tool to ask the right questions. I'm interested because certainly in coaching, tone of voice actually is very, very important. And when to speak quietly, when to maybe be a little bit more forceful with your voice. I've found that tone is really, really critical in getting a message across, and also listening to other people's tone of voice, where you can feel a real powerful and genuine sense of commitment, as opposed to a kind of flakier commitment, or a real vision for something. And you can feel it in the power of their voice, whereas there are other tones that kind of give people away a little bit.
Yeah, and one of the things we are taught pretty early on is monitoring not only body language, but as you say, also tone, pace of speech. And what you're trying to do there is notice people's default mode, and when they alter from that, as that usually means either they are lying potentially, they are a bit more worried, or they're a bit more proud, and you can kind of pick that up. And I think one of the most important things is to take note of not only what they're saying and the content, but actually how they're saying it as well. And that's one of the things, again, which we are told to monitor, and what you also try and do in order to really open up or get real traction is also monitor how they interact. Do they speak slowly? Does that mean you should speak slowly? And I think that's an important part of trying to build rapport with people as well, within quite a short period of time.
Efe, how important do you find the preparation before you speak to somebody or interview somebody? Because obviously in sport it is incredibly important to not only prepare your player or players for an upcoming match or event, and the better prepared they are for all the different things, especially that can happen psychologically in a match, I find they definitely deal with it better. So as an example, in the book I talk a lot about making statements, which is usually a move that has an impact on the opposition. So some may, you need to serve and volley certain points, which will make an impact. Now, if the player hasn't mentally prepared before the match to actually serve and volley those points, and it gets a little bit tight, you can find that the player actually won't do it in those moments if they haven't clearly prepared mentally to do it in those moments.
No, I think preparation is absolutely vital in terms of what we do, and I think, again, if you're looking at what good headhunters do before the meeting, you spend time thinking about not only reading the CV and understanding the background, but also understanding what makes that person tick, because it's quite an unusual situation in the sense you have 1 hour to not only quiz them and really make sure that they're a good candidate, but there is also rapport building within that as well. And so unless you've spent a bit of time figuring out how old his children are, who his favourite football team are, little things like that, actually later down the line when you're trying to really get this person to take on the job, make the difference, as if you remember about the school needs of of their children, or where they're situated, or things about their mother, and little personal details as well. So spending a lot of time actually before the meeting really understanding what might be their drivers just completely affects the way in which you're able to approach the meeting, and also gives you a little bit of the upper hand in the sense that you're not surprised by any information, and you can therefore take the front foot in terms of what you need to do as well.
Yeah, so that's really like good scouting.
Yeah, it's very similar actually.
Yeah. And when someone has a strong CV and reputation in business, it's equivalent of having a lot of locker room power in the sports arena. How have you found in business, does this kind of accelerate for certain people or wane for other people? And because if a top football team, if we take an example of Arsenal doesn't win a trophy for many years, the belief of everybody around is that their locker room power is not that strong anymore. But if they can suddenly start to win a lot more, and then that their power grows. So in business, how much is it based on reputation, or how much do you just glean from the CVs?
Yeah, I think the reputation and the colour around the CV is what makes a good CEO, to be honest. You have guys who have serially gone into businesses that are underperforming time after time, gone in, and after a few years they've turned the business around and the culture and everything that goes on with it, and therefore even before they turn up to the interview they have this almost aura around them in terms of what they can do, and before you've even met them you already have the intimation that they're a good individual and that they're a good CEO. And so building up that reputation over 2, 3, 4 successful jobs makes a huge difference in terms of what they're able to do. And if you look at the actual tools which they're using to turn these companies around, it's sometimes not that different from guys who haven't managed to do it, but they have this almost, you can feel it when you meet them sometimes, this kind of charisma, reputation that this precedes them, which means that not only does it make it really hard to interview them because you're already impressed by them before they've come in the room, but also when they do take on these jobs, immediately they have a head start on a guy who's never done it before, for example, and really needs to prove himself. So people live and die by their reputation, and again, people who've failed in particular roles, again, before they go into interviews, if you brought up their name with a client, immediately they have that reputation of failure around them, and that can be really hard to shrug off in the same way a good reputation is hard to keep up as well, I think.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because in every walk of life, that aura, that charisma, which is so important, and probably I think it makes people good leaders in that they're believable. In other words, I've done this before, trust me, I can do it again, and if you guys follow me, we'll get this done. But of course, if that same person fails maybe 2 or 3 times in a row after a series of successes, suddenly the question marks come about, and the power that they have is lessened.
Exactly. And I think also you can feel the effect of that kind of locker room power approach with guys who maybe haven't done it before and come into a situation, but given their reputation, having not been in the top job before, are able to step up, and again that charisma, their what people have heard about them makes them really believable, and therefore even though they haven't done that exact job before, they're able to convert what they've done and that reputation into a different situation. And again, that's what makes, I think, a better CEO than someone else, for example.
I talk in the book a lot about separating belief from confidence. In other words, a fundamental belief in what you can do should be your foundation. And I do maintain that the best performers in the world in anything are those who have a fundamental belief in themselves. Confidence for everybody is the stuff that sits on top of that foundation. And with everybody, when you're flying, it's easy, and you perform extremely well. And then if a few things go wrong, you lose a bit of confidence. But there are some people where their confidence and belief are linked. And therefore the foundation actually moves up and down as well. And I find that is a killer of consistency. Those who have a fundamental belief even through the tough times, have a steel about them that those who don't have, because they fall through the floor.
Yeah, and I think that's you can see that in a number of situations with CEOs, in the sense that I think, you know, it's been said before and described as the loneliest job in the world, in the sense that you have to make decisions which you might not necessarily have the backing of your board, or you might not necessarily have the backing of your team, and unless you do have that fundamental foundation within you, it's very hard to make those decisions. And again, it's particularly in the world we operate, which is private equity and quick decisions, you don't often have the time to, you know, ask a number of different people. You have to really believe in what you know is the right way to go and have that fundamental belief, or you can't go anywhere. And if you look at, you know, one of the things which our clients in terms of when jobs or CEOs don't work out, it's often because they can't make those decisions in quick enough fashion, and that boils down to a lack of fundamental belief in their opinion and what they're able to do, whether it's right or wrong as well. So I think that can translate quite well actually into what they do.
Great. Now that Watford are going up to the Premiership, what are your thoughts about their chances of staying, and you know, how have you seen this team over the season grow into what it's become? Because it's very interesting, in a season where they had actually a lot of change. They finally got it right and went up.
I know I could talk for hours on this, but I think what we did, so Watford, for those who didn't know, changed their manager 4 times it's been this season, which is highly unusual in terms of having a successful team. But I think the latest manager, what he did was remove a lot of people who were detrimental to the team. Even though they were 2 or 3 of our better players at that time, their attitude was dragging down the rest of the team, and there was a real kind of negative vibe within that atmosphere. And I think secondly, what he did, which we used to have, was he brought the fear back into, you know, when we played opposition, in the sense that we had been known for scoring a lot of goals, and if someone scores 1, we'd score 2. A couple of seasons ago, we'd had that reputation. We kind of lost that way, and I think he just installed this self-belief in our strikers and the midfielders that if we concede a goal, it's not the end of the world, and we can go and score 2, 3, 4. And I think if you look at how many goals we scored this season, I think our defence wasn't particularly good, but on the, you know, in terms of the amount of goals we scored, it made a huge difference, and I think that's in the end what contributed to us going up. Whether we survive or not is is a tough one to tell. I mean, we have good owners who've invested in the club in the right way, and I think, you know, they'll continue to do so, just given on the amount of money they can make within the Premier League. And I think if they do that, we've got, you know, 3, 4, 5 Premier League quality players already in there, so it's just trying to add to that and a bit of luck along the way. And you look at teams such as Swansea, who've managed to do it, not spending a huge amount, and you think there is hope for teams like Watford, but it becomes harder and harder in the Premier League, I think.
Yeah, I think the model that your owners have, which is got teams in Italy, Spain and Britain,
exactly,
where they can interchange players as well, is an interesting model, because they seem to be doing okay across all 3 countries, and that points to a clever model, and possibly something that will become more common in the future.
It's an interesting model. I mean, it's drawn a lot of controversy, I guess, a couple of seasons ago when they first took over the club, in terms of is it fair, which is a whole different conversation. But I think what they've shown is that you can make money and run football clubs effectively if you do it in a very sensible way, and they've invested, rather than investing in wages, they've invested in a large scouting network to give them, you know, people like Alexis Sanchez, who was, you know, one of their teams, Udinese in Italy. He came through their scouting network there, and I think, you know, that ability to find rough gems and turn them into finished products can, you know, build good and successful and actually profitable teams as well.
And so in your line of work, would you say you have to have a pretty good scouting system in order to find those hidden gems that are really very competent people that maybe haven't quite surfaced yet?
Yeah, that's a vital part. And if you look at what our competitors do, some of the bigger search firms as well, they have huge networks of people, and they will know people not only at CEO level, they'll know people 3, 4, 5 rungs below that, and they'll be tracking them for a number of years, which is what we do as well. And it's just, that ability to really figure out where these diamonds are, within the rough, and who the real rising stars are, as you said earlier, compared to people who are faking it and don't actually have that foundation beneath them, is a really difficult part of the job. And that's why I guess people use headhunters, because we spend the time on that scouting network, whereas a company might not be able to have the time or resource to do so.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
And before I go, just to remind you that the book is available on Kindle, Amazon, iBooks, iTunes, and obviously lockerroompower.com. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll talk again next month.